Welcome in. It is officially redraft rankings time. You guys might notice, you've never seen us in this location before. What the heck are these guys doing next to each other? But what we are doing next to each other is we have a brand new kind of studio setup here. So let us know what you think of it down below. But Danny, let's not bury the lead. We got top 24 running backs for redraft, for best ball, all that good stuff in today's video. And let's kick it off with the RB1 and this real consensus top 3 tier of running backs that we have. We do not have Saquon Barkley RB1. It's not because Saquon Barkley is not highly ranked for us. He is our RB2, spoiler alert. But Bijan Robinson is our RB1. Danny, I'll let you kick it off with Bijan.
I mean, what isn't there to love about Bijan Robinson projecting into his third year as a pro? We had a year or two in the NFL where a prime Bijan Robinson, one of the best prospects we have ever seen at the running back position, produced 20.1 PPR points per game and was the RB3 on the season. When you look at the whole array, the whole package of what he brings to the table entering his third year in the league, we know that the receiving volume is going to be there. Top 5 amongst running backs last year, 72 targets, number 1 in the NFL in terms of weighted opportunities. He gets a huge workload, and we saw him last year on that workload. 1,800 total yards, 15 touchdowns from scrimmage, with Atlanta ranking as a slightly above average offense. On top of that, 20 plus PPR points in 10 of his last 12 games. He's got an ironclad case. The only real question mark about Bijan Robinson at 1 is why would we ranking him above Saquon Barkley? I'll let you tackle that and I'll add on.
Yeah, like both of these guys, I think, Bijan and Saquon, they're going to project for 20 to 22 PPR points per game on a great season. Both of them were in that range last year, for example. But Bijan Robinson, with 72 targets last year, still has room to improve on that. He is only 23 years old entering his 3rd NFL season. Who's to say Penix's not a very mobile quarterback? Neither was Cousins, of course, but Penix doesn't check the ball down 115 times.
In terms of running tendencies, he actually ran a 4.43, but the guy does not run at all when he's actually in an in-game context.
Yeah, exactly. The actual like legendary 25 point per game range of outcomes is probably not there for Saquon Barkley this season, given that he's, 28 years old. He's in an offense that does, still run the tush push on the goal line. Yep. He also won't have the same target ceiling as Bijan Robinson. So we're splitting hairs between two absolutely elite stud workhorse running backs who are probably, for my money, the best 2 running backs in football from a talent standpoint as well. But Bijan, given that he's an ascending player with a little bit more receiving upside, 1,800 total yards and 15 touchdowns. That was the quietest 1,800 total yards and 15 touchdowns that I think I've ever seen a second-year running back have.
Well, the easiest way to put it is last year we were drafting Bijan Robinson as a top 5 or 6 overall pick when we had quarterback uncertainty. Obviously, Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles, Michael Penix not proven the NFL. We had concerns in terms of if Bijan Robinson would hit that top percentile ceiling given what he showed as a rookie. And now after a 20-plus point per game year with a better offensive projection, he's going about the same range he was last year. For us, again, he's the clear RB1 because he has that receiving ceiling on top of potentially a 1,500-yard, 15-plus rushing touchdown type of projection. You're getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, I have him ranked 102 in redraft leagues. In best
103
ball,
for me.
Yeah, in best ball, I mean, maybe you want to move him down a little bit more because you want to prioritize wide receiver or whatever. But in redraft managed leagues, Bijan, 10 of his last 12 games was a 20 PPR point per game score. Yeah. That type of consistency, that type of high-end production. And again, Zach Robinson came in last year. That was a question mark. We kind of saw how it would work out from Bijan's perspective. It was an excellent fit. A lot more efficient as a second-year player than he was as a rookie. We could gush about Bijan pretty much all day.
I guess my final note, too, that division this year is going to have a lot of points freaking scored. With the Carolina Panthers, obviously you guys, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Saints, we saw their defense really underperforming down the stretch. Like, you're getting 6 games a year against what should be one of the highest scoring divisions in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Bijan Robinson is our RB1. Again, a little bit of contentious stuff at the top, but Saquon Barkley, I mean, pretty straightforward what you're getting with Saquon.
Yeah, and if you're a Saquon Barkley dynasty manager, maybe you were rooting for the tush push to be abolished from the NFL this offseason, but unfortunately, it wasn't. Despite that, though, even with that play intact, he is a fantasy football cheat code. Last year, despite being sniped on the 1-yard line 11 times, when I say sniped, I mean he got downed on the 1-yard line and did not end up scoring on that drive. Despite that happening 11 times this past season, 22.1 points per game, RB1 in fantasy. From a macro perspective, it's pretty simple, especially if you're in a half PPR, non-PPR league. He's probably your 101 because he still plays in the most insulated offense in the league. Best offensive line in the league. Team with an 11.5 win total. Defending Super Bowl champions. On top of that, we just saw Saquon Barkley finally in a good offense for the one time in his career. Rush for 2,005 rushing yards and 5.8 yards per carry. Like, because it's PPR, I prefer Bijan. But like I said, if you're in a non-PPR, you're in a half PPR league where rushing touchdown equity, rushing yardage equity, overall carry equity matters even more. I mean, Saquon Barkley must be one of the most solidified picks at the top that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, and with all three of these top guys, you're going to see those 70-yard touchdowns.
Yes.
You know, from Bijan, we haven't seen it quite as much. I think this could be the year we see a little bit more of that. But Barkley, I mean, that Rams game alone, like he just housed like a bunch of huge plays. In the playoffs, of course, we saw him do it a couple times too. So that's the other thing you're getting with Barkley is those week winning, I'm down 26 points going into Monday Night Football, and I got Saquon to go. You feel pretty good about your chances of still winning that matchup.
He's one of the few players in fantasy. You could be going into a Monday Night Football game with any deficit and feel confident that you'd have at least a puncher's chance to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So closing out this top tier of running backs, and with all three of these guys, Jahmyr Gibbs being the last of the Detroit Lions, I'd be comfortable in a managed redraft league, PPR, half PPR, non-PPR, whatever, spending a top 3 to 5 pick on all three of these guys. Like in managed redraft leagues, I have Gibbs as my 104, I have Bijan as my 102, and Saquon as my 103. Chase is the only guy ahead of them for me just because we saw a little bit of down production from, Dak coming off of an injury. CeeDee Lamb not quite as good as he was in 2023. Justin Jefferson has a quarterback situation. Those are the clear top 6. But for me, I do prefer these running backs in managed redraft leagues as opposed to best ball. Maybe you want to favor the receiver.
Yeah, and again, the slight difference for me, I have Chase at 1. I have CeeDee Lamb at 2. I would then have Bijan Robinson at 3. Saquon Barkley at 4. Justin Jefferson at 5. And Jahmyr Gibbs at 6. But ultimately, if you have a top 6 pick in your fantasy league, you're living pretty good because any 3 of these running backs, any 3 of the wide receivers we'll talk about on the wide receiver video, absolute dynamites that you want as your first overall player on your fantasy teams.
Yeah, and Gibbs, 21.3 PPR points per game last year, RB2 in fantasy scoring. I think Ben Johnson being gone is the biggest disruptor to maybe why you wouldn't favor Jahmyr Gibbs, even potentially over Bijan Robinson, who he did actually outscore last year. But when you look at the situation, it's the Lions offense. They have one of the best offensive lines in football. Gibbs, 20 touchdowns last year or something like that? This is a very, very good running back who has a 100 target upside. Probably not going to rush, more than 230 to 250 times.
1,400 rushing yards last year.
Yeah, and he has that ability too with 4.3 speed to house any play. And a lot of his touchdowns too were not scored on the 1 yard line because we know David Montgomery is going to maybe take away some of those.
Yeah, and that was the number one thing. Like you said, RB2 in fantasy points per game, 21.3 last year. Yeah, we have some concerns with Ben Johnson leaving for why we can't maybe rank him over Barkley or Bijan. But that doesn't take any away from Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, even with John Morton taking over, which, again, questionable to see just how strong, just how potent the Lions offense will be. Yeah, maybe they're not the 34 point per game offense they were last year. Maybe they're a 26 to 28 point per game offense. But I still feel very confident that this is a superstar player behind a loaded offensive line that wants to run the football with a running back last year that when David Montgomery missed time, again, a 22-year-old second-year running back, when David Montgomery missed any time in the last 2 years, a guy that's averaged 27.4 PPR points per game, 147 yards from scrimmage per game, and 1.34 touchdowns per game.
Yeah, you can't beat that. Like, you go, if you're in your fantasy championship next year and David Montgomery's hurt and you're facing Jahmyr Gibbs, good luck.
Chalk it up.
Good luck. You're probably going to lose because Gibbs, like you said, he's damn near a 30 point per game running back when Montgomery's out of the lineup.
It's polarizing because I think in the top 6, again, the reason why he can't rank, like I said, over Bijan and Barkley was because obviously Montgomery is there and the change in terms of offensive philosophy, potentially moving from Ben Johnson to John Morton. But even despite that, he's a top 5 level median projection when Montgomery is out there. And like you said, if Montgomery misses a 3-game stretch, 4-game stretch, 5-game stretch, heck, even if he just missed the fantasy championship and you got in there, he will be the number 1 overall ranked player that week.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He's an absolute beast. We can probably move on. Again, you see the splits on the screen, how good he actually was when Montgomery does miss time. But even if Montgomery plays the whole season, maybe the offense regresses from like the number 1 scoring offense in the league to like a top 5 scoring offense, you're still getting a guy with 18 to 21 PPR point per game kind of median projection there. Let's move into tier 2. These guys, I would say relative draft range are probably more late first rounders, early second rounders, depending on what kind of league you guys are in. Running back heavy leagues, maybe they go a little bit higher than this. But our RB4 is Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins, who's been a top 6 running back in back-to-back seasons as a first and a second-year player, 17.6 PPR points per game last year, 87 targets, number 4 in weighted opportunities, and he led all running backs with 592 receiving yards. So PPR formats especially, he's going to give you a lot through the air. In games with Tua Tagovailoa last year, this is the crucial split for Devon Achane. 17.6, again, PPR points per game in totality on the year. He was RB6 in points per game. When Tua was healthy, which of course we don't, I mean, maybe he misses a game or two here, 22.55 PPR points per game. That was better than Saquon Barkley posted last year. Healthy Tua Tagovailoa games that Devon Achane played in, he was better on a per game basis than Saquon Barkley last year, who was the RB1 in fantasy. And if you notice in the splits here, Devon Achane couldn't find the end zone. He wasn't nearly getting the amount of targets he was getting without Tua out there. The offense, all of us have eyeballs.
Efficiency.
We all watched the Dolphins without Tua, how bad it actually was. Even if Tua Tagovailoa went down again, let's say he missed 3 games next year, Zach Wilson and Quinn Ewers are better than what they were trotting out there. I'm not going to say that
Debatably.
I'm not going to say that they're good quarterbacks. They are definitely not. But Zach Wilson was good enough to get Breece Hall to a top 6 fantasy football season. So as it pertains to Devon Achane, maybe not as much to the receivers, they're probably good enough to suffice and make sure Devon Achane's at least a 15 to 18 point per game scorer if Tua's out of the lineup.
Yeah, and I guess the only difference, again, you guys will see the rest of this tier, full transparency, full disclosure. Devon Achane, Christian McCaffrey, and my running back 4 here, Ashton Jeanty, are all our running backs 4 to 6. So we mentioned the top 3. We all have in the exact same order there with Bijan, Barkley, Gibbs in that exact order. This 4 to 6 range, we actually have almost turned on its head. You have Achane at 4. I have him at 6. Like we mentioned, we'll talk about Christian McCaffrey and Ashton Jeanty in a second. You made the pro case for Devon Achane. I think the con and the reason why I do prefer those other 2 running backs is that if the bottom does fall out in Miami, again, Tua has missed significant time. We saw the scheme kind of look a little fluctuating. Obviously, the offensive line not really performing as much last year compared to the year before. I still really love Devon Achane. I still think he has a league-winning level ceiling. But I'm splitting hairs between him, Christian McCaffrey, Ashton Jeanty, who I think all 3 have league-winning level ceilings. That's kind of what knocks him for me at RB6, is I think his floor, when he's healthy, obviously, McCaffrey, we'll talk about the injury woes in a second. When all 3 are healthy, I think the floor, given the offensive insulation, is the lowest there.
Yeah, and I think you could maybe argue that Jalen Wright has a bigger role this year in the Dolphins offense. But again, number 4 in weighted opportunities per game. Even if Jalen Wright takes away a little bit of dirty carries or whatever, I do think that Achane's going to get the stuff that we care about, the goal line stuff, the targets, all that kind of stuff. So let's pivot into your our RB5 collectively, but your RB4, like you said, in Ashton Jeanty, who, of course, is a rookie. So some people maybe in a redraft setting don't want to take rookies in the first round, that kind of thing.
And sure, I think it makes sense. However, when you're looking at his FSC prospect grade, I mean, shout out you, obviously you did a lot of work on that this offseason. We do see that he has the 4th highest score ever. Obviously, rounded up, it's at a 0.9. I believe when you round it down, it's at what, an
89, 87 or something like that.
Regardless, though, when you take the 5 most comparable running backs in the prospect model to him, that being Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, Leonard Fournette, Ezekiel Elliott, if you aggregate their seasons, again, I kind of classified it as running back prospects with a 0.85 or higher FSC prospect grade. The whole total we look at with all 5 of these guys, 18.5 PPR points per game, which would have landed as the RB6 in 2024. But when you actually contextualize this list and you look at, for example, Bijan Robinson got drafted to a situation with Tyler Algier, didn't really commit to him in terms of the full workload right away, as you guys can see with the opportunity share, along with Christian McCaffrey, for example, splitting time with Jonathan Stewart, Cam Newton being a 700-plus rushing yard player that year. When you contextualize that, Ashton Jeanty should have a much higher stranglehold of his opportunity share from the get-go. Those other 3 running backs averaged 21.17 PPR points per game. That would have ranked as the RB2 last year. Jeanty has no immediate threats to his workload. In fact, his only real threat, quote unquote, is a washed Raheem Mostert being the scariest player behind him right now, and has a new regime with a coaching staff, with Pete Carroll, with the front office. Obviously, you have Spy Tech coming over to the Raiders from Tampa Bay. You have Tom Brady playing a role in the front office. Their first overall pick of that new regime was a number 6 overall pick on the franchise identity. I guess I would classify Ashton Jeanty as. Really, when you think of the Raiders offense going forward, it is Ashton Jeanty and it is Brock Bowers. Those are the 2 pillars, and I do think that's kind of how they're going to operate as. Obviously, we have the more stabilized passing game. Geno Smith coming in, a little bit underrated with his tenure the last couple of years with Seattle. We have Chip Kelly coming in from the 8th highest graded rushing attack in college football with the Ohio State Buckeyes this past year. And after the big three running backs with Saquon Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Jahmyr Gibbs, he's my clear target because you're getting the young role. You're re-rolling on a young player that just went 6th overall, but you're still accepting a similar upside, like 21.17 points per game. I think is very well in the range of outcome for Ashton Jeanty, while not having maybe the floor. Devon Achane, we mentioned, if the offense bottoms out. Christian McCaffrey, older running back coming off of injury. I just feel safest with Ashton Jeanty in that range.
Yeah, I think you can argue all of these guys any which way. If you're shooting for pure upside, we'll talk about McCaffrey in a second. He's obviously like the best fantasy football running back to ever exist. But Jeanty, of course, young player, comes in. He's probably set to have 350, 400 plus touches this year, given what's in that backfield. Like you said, a washed Raheem Mostert, Zamir White. Like there's
opportunity to be number 2 in targets.
This is not Tyler Algiers behind him on the depth chart. He also had Desmond Ridder as his quarterback that year, Bijan Robinson in Atlanta. This is not, like you said, Jonathan Stewart, who was a perennial Pro Bowler, and Cam Newton at the quarterback position. Like Geno, not that mobile of a quarterback. He'll probably throw the ball to Jeanty quite a bit. And also Geno, like you said, probably a top 15 to 20 quarterback in the league, a very underrated player. He can move the offense. Bowers, of course, to take away some attention. Bowers also a very good blocker in the run game as well. Besh and Jacoby Myers also probably, going to help out in the run game a little bit too. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to poke holes in Jeanty other than the fact that we haven't seen it yet because he's a rookie.
Yeah, and the last note I will make on Ashton Jeanty, because even when we include the whole sample, keep in mind, the only classifier I put in that sample of the 18.5 versus 21.17 were running backs in their rookie years with a 60+% opportunity share. Like 60+%. It's not like I said 65 plus, 70 plus, 75+%. I'm not saying like, oh, he has to go out there and be a 75+% opportunity share guy right away. Like we had Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson being RB1 level projections on a 52%, 48% opportunity share. As long as Ashton Jeanty gets above the 60% barrier, that is the collection that had 21.2 points per game.
Yeah, I think, rookie year Zeke, rookie year Najee Harris, those type of workloads are probably what you can expect from what Jeanty can bring to the table. But we can move into Christian McCaffrey, who rounds out this tier. Going to be a very contentious subject in redraft leagues across the board because Christian McCaffrey is, like I said earlier, the best fantasy football running back who has ever lived. Yep. He is the best season of all time, 2019, one of the top 5 to 6 seasons, I believe, in 2023. This dude's got multiple years of 24 or 23 plus points per game. He had 4 league-winning seasons in his career, in his 3rd legendary season just 2 years ago. But last year, dealt with the Achilles tendonitis, a sprained PCL after the Achilles tendonitis that limited him to just 4 games and 12 PPR points per game last year. So a lot of people probably got burned by Christian McCaffrey in a league or two, don't want to draft him again. He's old, right? He's 28, 29 years old. Deebo Samuel is gone. Brandon Ayuk is coming into the season banged up. Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, those guys are less proven than what he has had to deal with in terms of the offense in San Francisco before. And of course, Brock Purdy back now on a big extension. The only question, in my opinion, that you can have about Christian McCaffrey is, are you okay with the health and the age? Because when he's on the field, if you and I are, we got to draft for upside this, upside that, there is no running back who has ever been better from a fantasy football perspective than Christian McCaffrey. I can lock him in for 100 plus targets and 20 plus rushing touchdowns if he's healthy and playing like himself.
I got one. Jahmyr Gibbs without David Montgomery, because I'll tell you right now, that would be the only scenario where I'd have someone ranked above Christian McCaffrey in a Week 17 winner take home.
Yeah. And like when you talk about the health, Jeff Mueller, shout out, you guys can see this tweet on the screen. George Kittle actually had this exact injury a couple of years back, and he got some stem cell treatment. He hasn't had any issues since. And George Kittle, if you guys remember, was kind of a Band-Aid for a period of his career. Christian McCaffrey had the same kind of stem cell stuff happen again, and apparently he's fully healthy. And I think one thing that points out that he's fully healthy is you think of what the 49ers...
Traded Jordan Mason.
Yeah, you trade Jordan Mason. Yeah. You don't draft any more running backs in a deep running back class. I mean, you draft Jordan James in the 6th round or whatever it was. Isaac Guerrero, who you drafted last year. I'm not really worried about those guys. Healthy Christian McCaffrey, to me, is the fact that they did not add a significant contributor to the running back position in the offseason. And if Christian McCaffrey was hurt, not healthy right now, they would probably have added a 3rd round running back or a 2nd round running back.
They would have signed a J.K. Dobbins. They would have signed a Nick Chubb. They would have signed some type of insurance, but it does seem like it's wheels up for Christian McCaffrey. Again, you could even argue that where we have him is a little bit low, because I think there's going to be the most steamed players. Like, we're going to have this discussion in August, and quite frankly, I think we're going to be talking about, is he a top 8 overall pick? Is he a top 9 overall pick? The market just isn't there yet, and I think that's just more so the uncertain factor. But regardless, like I said, Other than a Jahmyr Gibbs without David Montgomery in his backfield, Christian McCaffrey would be the #1 ranked player in a Week 17 setting winner take home. And if that is the case, getting him anywhere in round 2 is the steal of your draft.
Absolutely. And if you guys want to draft Christian McCaffrey right now, let me just point out to you guys that his ADP on Underdog is in the mid-second round. So right now, while all the sickos like you and I are drafting where we love wide receivers, we hate old running backs, get your value of Christian McCaffrey now. And of course, head on over to Underdog Fantasy. Use the promo code FSE when you sign up. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds on the site. And you'll get a gimme pick. If you guys are watching the NBA playoffs, the NHL playoffs, you can use those gimme picks right away. Or you can save them for the football season. But regardless, let's get into the tier 3 of running backs. And we can try and speed these up a little bit because we did go really in depth on those top guys. But you're spending first and early second round picks on them, including with this guy. We do have Derrick Henry, a tier behind the other guys. I think you could definitely make the argument that Derrick Henry belongs in that top tier, maybe worthy of a late first round, early second round pick. That's about where I have him ranked, more in the early second round range. But last year, RB4 in PPR points per game, 19.8. That was one of the best seasons of his career. 1,921 rushing yards and 18 touchdowns. He is a lock to have 15 plus rushing touchdowns. I would, if I had to put a single chip down on who leads the league in rushing touchdowns, it's probably Derrick Henry. I will say
Saquon's the next closest.
Saquon's very close. Not to mention, it is a high bar at 30 years old to average 5.9 yards per carry, which is what he needed to do and punch in that many scores to be a top 4 running back in PPR points per game. Am I going to sit here and say I'm not drafting Derrick Henry because he doesn't catch the football? Absolutely not. What I do know, though, is that he cannot be ranked ahead of Christian McCaffrey or Ashton Jeanty or Devon Achane in PPR formats because he had 18 receptions last year. And the Ravens are going to be elite. Automatic in the red zone. Derrick Henry's getting the football. Goal line to go. 15 goal line carries last year. He cashed in every single time. Every single time he scored a touchdown on every goal line carry. It is worth noting that he was the RB 18 in expected fantasy points per game. Are we ballsy enough to say that he might regress down to maybe he finishes RB 8 or 9 next year on the same type of usage because we've seen him in this backfield? I'm not going to say don't draft Derrick Henry, but he's 31 and he does have a lack of receiving upside. So you need that high efficiency, high touchdown, high rushing yards.
Derrick Henry is so contentious for me because when I think of Derrick Henry in my drafts, the only reason I would take Derrick Henry earliest in the second would be because I know I'm in a league that even if he started the season slow or maybe didn't look like the player and I can get out from a risk asset standpoint, he's not going to be available to me in the leagues that he would still hold that type of value. The only leagues I would feel comfortable taking him in is when he falls to the mid-second, when he falls to the 15, 16, 17 range. That's when I start thinking about Henry. The issue is if he's falling there in your leagues, you're probably in a sharper league that all views Henry the same thing, where if he does show signs like that, he's probably not going to hold the same value ceiling. And like I said, if you're in a league that will value Henry if he has a slow stretch, he's not even going to make it to you at the 16, 17 spot. He's going to go in the first round of those leagues. So with Derrick Henry, it's like you're either in a league that values Derrick Henry, the name cliche, what he did last year on surface level playing for the Baltimore Ravens, or you have the leagues where they view it as a 30-year-old running back, unsustainable efficiency, RB 18 in expected fantasy points per game. That's what makes him so polarizing, is that where I want to get him, he won't actually fall to me in leagues that he'll actually hold value in.
Yeah, I'll take him in the early second round. I have him ranked at 15th overall. If he falls there,
15,
I'll take
16,
him.
17 is fine. It's just when I get to like 13 and I'm eyeing him down versus like Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, I'm not pressing the Henry button. I'm not clicking it.
Yeah, unless it's a standard or maybe in a half PPR, you could maybe press that button. But in full PPR, it's going to be very difficult to do that. But Henry is, he's going to be one of these guys that everybody has. Like, there's going to be somebody, out there that takes Henry like 103. Like, there's going to be somebody that does it. And I wouldn't do it personally unless it was like maybe a standard league or something. But yeah, he's Derrick Henry. Everybody loves Derrick Henry. He's very fun to have on your fantasy football team. Let's just put it that way.
What's not to like about a 250-pound beast of a man that touched the ball 5 times in a row on the 5-yard line? Like when he is in his peak and when he's giving you the 20-plus point per game weeks, it's so much fun to enjoy Derrick Henry. The issue is that the moment he has a bad week, his value is just so much more volatile than some of the other backs.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, we expect the Ravens to be a good team. I don't think game script to be a huge issue, but there's going to be 3-4 games during the year that the Ravens maybe get down in the first half or whatever the case is. Anyways, we're nitpicking. Let's move into Chase Brown, who is our RB8. And you guys might be wondering, holy crap, you have Chase Brown all the way up at RB8. He's also a very contentious running back because it's what do you believe about Chase Brown? Do you believe that the first half of the year is the true side of Chase Brown, which is that he wasn't really a starter until Zach Moss went out with the injury? Or do you believe in the guy that was like probably the biggest league winner of all of fantasy football from like week 9 onward?
Yeah, and as you guys can see on the screen, I mean, he was literally a league winner down the stretch. He was getting 80+% of the work. Once Zach Moss was out of the lineup, we were looking at a consistent 20 points, 20 points, 19 points, 19 points, 24 points, 26 points. He was one of the most dominant fantasy football running backs down the stretch. But like you said, it's like the chicken or the egg situation here. Which one do we trust? Did he get the workload because Zach Moss was out? Or when Zach Moss is out, did they realize that they had their true running back one with Chase Brown? That is going to be the main question, because when you look at the backfield competition, all that's brought back there is Zach Moss, who literally this offseason was described as potentially having a career-threatening neck injury, and a 6th-round Taj Brooks, which, quite frankly, I view as a stylistically similar Moss insurance. I don't view Taj Brooks as a guy that's going to take over the #1 job from Chase Brown. I think it's more so a guy that can split in and pitch in if Zach Moss is not able to play on the field.
Yeah, because again, if you just took what he did from week 9 onwards and you took it verbatim, that's what he's going to do this year. He was a 20.9 PPR point per game running back from week 9 onward. He dominated outside of the fantasy playoffs where he had like 14 points and 13.1. He was like a locked and loaded 19 plus per game. Like the Bengals still have a bad defense. The Bengals still have Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. All these guys are going to help move the offense. And Chase Brown reaped the benefits of that. And Chase Brown is a good player. He's just not quite as good as maybe some of the other names that we're going to talk about in this range.
And I think maybe that is the biggest question, because like superstar for superstar, like Chase Brown versus Derrick Henry, like Derrick Henry is a much better running back. But if Chase Brown is getting that type of workload on arguably the best offense in the league, again, Joe Burrow's going to sling the thing out of the rock. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins is going to move the ball down the field. If Chase Brown is getting the autonomy of the goal line role on top of the receiving workload we saw down the stretch last year, he is the biggest value in drafts in the 2nd round. This is a 1st-round profile. The issue is there's some downside if we do see the rotation kind of be split into a little bit like we saw maybe at the beginning portion of last year versus what we saw at the end of last year.
Yeah, he's going to vary from league to league for sure. I think in more casual leagues, you might be able to get Chase Brown at like the 2-3 turn, maybe even into the
3rd round in Underdog.
Yeah, maybe even in the mid-3rd round potentially of Underdog drafts, and also even, you know, leagues where people are like, I'm not taking Chase Brown with my 2nd round pick. Like I would rather take Tyreek Hill or somebody with like a bigger name.
Yeah, we're not too far from London, Ontario, so I just want to shout out the London folk here with Chase Brown, Canadian lad himself.
Absolutely. So let's get into my my Buccaneers here with Bucky Irving, who's my running back 9, or our running back 9 collectively.
Yep.
Another one of these like efficiency guys, 5.4 yards per carry as a rookie, 14.4 PPR points per game on the season, but from week 6 onward, he was an RB2 or better in every game except for 2, where he left early against the Raiders and against Kansas City on Monday Night Football. I think he like fumbled or something. I can't remember exactly why he didn't get a huge workload in that game, but regardless, post week 6, he did just have a 49% snap share. You know, this is not a guy, 6.8% or 6.8 utilization
how
score.
How did that rank like week 12, week 13 on?
He was a little bit better, but he was still sub 60%. Okay. This is a guy that is going to, you know, mourn the loss of Liam Cohen, who was an architect beyond architects of that run game. And also, Rachaad White can play. Rachaad White, the coaching staff, Josh Grizzard, the new offensive coordinator, who obviously was the pass game coordinator last year, worked with all of these guys already, said that Rachaad White is like the best pass protecting running back he's ever seen. And that's going to factor into Bucky Irving's receiving workload, his routes, and that kind of thing. Rachaad White's going to be a pest, in my opinion. So Bucky Irving, I think what you're looking at here is just exactly what Devon Achane was last year.
I was just going to say that.
Raheem Mostert was old, and we could project him kind of to get injured and stuff, whereas Rachaad White is a young player still in a contract year. I do expect the people who were anti-Achane last year because of Raheem Mostert might be somewhat proven right a little bit on Bucky Irving this year. I don't think he has much higher of a ceiling than 16 to 19 PPR points per game.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And you can make the case that there's safer projections for workload behind him. Like we'll talk about like Josh Jacobs in a second. We'll talk about running backs in that range. But like you said, it's a lottery ticket with Bucky Irving. That type of efficiency as a rookie 4th round running back who down the stretch, like you said, he was an RB2 or better in every game except 2 where he left early. Like if he can take that Devon Achane step up, if he could be like, for example, when we talked about Achane, 22.5 points per game in the games that Tua played in last year, 11 game sample size. Yeah, maybe Bucky Irving isn't going to hit 22.5, but if he can show that, hey, that legitimate 17, 18, 19 point per game area that I was down the stretch, final weeks of your season, if he can get to that level across the full season, RB9 is a value.
Yeah, I would say he's probably being drafted, or where we have him ranked right now is probably about 70% of his ceiling, give or take 80%. Like, I don't see him finishing much higher than RB5 or 6. Unless the Bucs were a top 5 offense in the league last year. So they already were that good. So maybe, I think they can be like, they have the best 4 stack of receivers in the league. Like they're going to be a very good offense, and Bucky's going to reap the benefits of that.
Well,
for sure.
I think another thing too is you guys had a very, very high passing touchdown rate inside the close areas. Like Baker threw 41 touchdowns.
He also rushed 4 touchdowns, I believe, in too.
Like prior to last year, again, like you said, 41 passing touchdowns is what Baker had.
I think so. Yeah, 40. I think
prior to last year, his career high was what, 27, 28, 29.
I think he had 29 his rookie season.
So it's like, yeah, maybe he's not going to go down all. He's dropping from 41 to 29. That's not what I'm saying. But even if it dropped to like 33, 34, 35, like there is some meat left on the bone to finish some drives in the rushing perspective rather than Baker finishing them off, throwing to Kate Otten, throwing to, Mike Evans, Emeka Buko, Chris Godwin. Like that's going to happen a lot this year. I'm not just saying, yeah, he's going to half his touchdowns, but there is some meat left on the bone there for Bucky if a couple of those passing touchdowns revert to rushing opportunities inside the 5.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have assumed that we were a very high pass volume offense too, and we actually weren't. We were about a league average run to pass split, and part of that was Liam wanting to establish the run game, and Grizzard was our pass game coordinator. So it's possible that we do go up in terms of pass rate, and maybe that's good for Bucky if he can win those routes, if he can win those reps on third down. But based on what I know so far, that might be bad for Bucky not getting as many carries because Rachaad White is like probably as good, if not better, of a receiver and definitely a better pass protector.
Yeah, more trustworthy option if you're a coaching staff and you're in a 3rd and 8 and you need somebody that can sit in there, take a chip and then roll into the flat.
Right.
Like Rachaad White makes babies doing that.
Yeah, exactly. So we can move on to the 10th running back that we have on our list here, which is Josh Jacobs. I mean, the first sentence you have listed here is exactly why I like Josh Jacobs. You have right here, he feels like such an easy click in drafts.
Yeah, I mean, the efficiency clicked back for him in 2024, 4.4 yards per carry after a down 2023 year with Vegas, where I believe he was at like 3.5. Finished this past season, RB8 in fantasy, 17.2 PPR points per game. And as we know, from a macro perspective, he's tethered to a good offense that I think has actual upside to be even better this year than what they were last year. Healthy Jordan Love, if you guys recall, week 1 Brazil game against the Eagles last year, ends up going down with an injury. I mean, we thought that he was tearing his ACL. He was out for the year, and then we ended up finding out that he was back in like a few weeks. It sounds like he rushed back from injury. On top of that, you have Matthew Golden, potential wide receiver one added, going to be able to stretch the field, going to be able to add some more verticality to this offense, which should only open up boxes for Josh Jacobs. As we know, a running back with complete goal line autonomy. Last year, Josh Jacobs scored 15 of the Packers' 23 rushing touchdowns on the season, and he had 337 opportunities. There's nothing this offseason that would indicate that, Marshawn Lloyd's going to take this big step. Emmanuel Wilson's going to take this big step. To me, it's going to be the Josh Jacobs show yet again. You start with an elite wide receiver in the top 5 of your drafts. Maybe you get a CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase type. You can pair Josh Jacobs at the end of the 2nd, early 3rd round and pair maybe like a T. Higgins on top of that. Yeah,
or a Ladd McConkey or an A.J. Brown or something like that. He's such an easy click, man. Like in leagues, I cannot believe this dude's going in the 3rd round on Underdog. Did we not learn our lesson on Josh Jacobs last year? When you and I, he was one of my highest drafted running backs. I'm like, what am I missing here? Like, what am I missing with Josh Jacobs? Last year, I'm like, the guy's literally on a way better offense than he was the year before. And like you said, you can argue that the Packers disappointed relative to expectations, and Jordan Love the year before was a top 5 fantasy quarterback, had a lot of, great production. Last year, things kind of ran cold as far as the quarterback getting hurt and that kind of thing. Like, it wouldn't shock me if Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing with 1,700 rushing yards this year.
On top of that, too, if you, I believe you guys at home can see this. Obviously, we're recording in person, so we don't have access to just Google this on the side. But you guys can research this. I believe he only had 1 rushing touchdown or 1 total touchdown 7 or 6 weeks into the year. He scored legitimately 85-90% of his touchdowns week 7 on.
Yeah, and like you said, week 1, he had that, Jordan Love got injured. Yeah. We had some Malik Willis games in there. We also had Jordan Love playing injured for week 4, week 5 of the season. So yeah, Jacobs, such an easy option, especially if you guys are in a managed redraft league and you're like, hey, I can't pass up CeeDee Lamb at the 106 or whatever, and maybe you're in a league that values running backs a little bit heavily. I'm not opposed to taking Josh Jacobs in the mid-2nd round. I think he has that easy of a projection.
And I think in redraft leagues, that's probably about where he'll end up nesting. On Underdog, again, if you guys are over on there right now, promo code FSE, take the value, because if this guy is anywhere in the third round and you can have him as your anchor running back after starting Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, CeeDee Lamb and Lau McConkey, Justin Jefferson and A.J. Brown, like, sign me up.
Yeah, absolutely. So closing out this tier of running back, we do have Jonathan Taylor, who I think is going a little bit higher than this, about running back 8 or 9. We have him at running back 11. He was so good in the weeks that mattered most that I think a lot of people are forgetting. He was like a replaceable RB2 for most of the season.
He was an end-of-season merchant. Again, we don't discriminate when the production comes. And in fact, we would rather the consequential production come weeks 14, 15, 16, 17 when your championships are on the line. But at some point, we have to analyze the fact that 92.4 of his 246.7 seasonal points were scored between weeks 16 and 18. You read that correctly. Nearly 40% of his seasonal production came in the final 3 games of the year. If you take his whole year points per game, which was 17.5 RB7, and you just simply removed week 16 and 18, I know you can't do that in theory, but I'm just giving you the context for what the season would have looked like. If you remove those 3 weeks, his points per game go from 17.5 to 13.8. RB7 to RB21. We're not just talking about a guy that, like, oh yeah, he's got spike week upside. It's exactly what we want at the end of the year. We're talking about a guy that you probably didn't even make the playoffs if you drafted in the second or third round of your league.
Yeah, and as someone who was doing the running back tier lists all season, I remember ranking Tony Pollard over him all year and Aaron Jones over him. Like, that's about the level of production he was giving you at the time. Yeah, he finished RB7 in points per game, and we go, okay, yeah, that was a great year from Jonathan Taylor. But then I remember my week 7 tier list, and I'm like, do I put Tony Pollard, who's on the team that ended up with the first overall pick, over him? Like, that, he was not a difference-making running back. But again, he won me a championship in our Tone Setter Truthers Dynasty League. I'm sure he won lots of you guys championships as well. I just think that we're overestimating exactly what Jonathan Taylor is at this point in his career. I think he's more of a 15-point per game type of projection than he is a 17, 18 point per game type of projection. What Jonathan Taylor needs is, what we needed out of like Nick Chubb in his good seasons, which is a lot of carries, a lot of goal line opportunity. And when I look at the Colts offense, I'm like, okay, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, do I feel great about goal line opportunity with those guys? Not necessarily, because if it is Richardson that starts, he can run the football inside the 10-yard line. So can Daniel Jones, for what it's worth. And this offense projects to probably be like a middling offense at best. I like Josh Downs. I like Adonai Mitchell, Michael Pittman, all those guys. But when you don't have the quarterback play, you don't have the quarterback play. It's possible that this team is kind of a middle to below average offense.
Yeah, and maybe we see Shane Steichen elevate this group, because I still think he's a talented offensive mind. But, I mean, we're another year removed of this being a middling level offense. Like you said, Jonathan Taylor, the quarterback play, we'll see. Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson. Regardless, I think we can easily say both are below average starting quarterback options at this point in their careers. Like we know with Jonathan Taylor, 0 receiving upside. If he's not getting tethered into, a boatload of goal line opportunities, 15, 16, 17, 18 touchdown level equity, we're not even baking in the fact that he hasn't finished a full season since 2021. Like, we're drafting a guy that hasn't finished a full season since 2021 with 0 receiving upside on an offense that we don't feel is going to be a top 12, top 15, top 18 unit in the league. I don't get it.
Yeah, I think there's not much separating Jonathan Taylor and James Conner if you really think about it, like realistically. And James Conner goes way, way, way later in drafts. Other than Trey Benson being better than DJ Giddens, the backfield competition there, I mean, I'd rather have Kyler than the quarterback play that you have with the Colts. James Conner has been objectively more durable.
More receiving work.
Yeah, more receiving work. Like, again, I don't want to shit on Jonathan Taylor too much because he's definitely still a good player and he's a fine anchor RB, but I would rather get him in round 3 than get him in round 2. And I don't think in a lot of leagues, given the name value and what he's done in the past in his career and how he finished the season, I highly doubt you get this guy in round 3.
And the biggest difference for us right now is that you actually have Jonathan Taylor ranked above this next guy who actually starts off this next tier, because you had JT closer to the other guys. I had JT actually behind Breece Hall, who we were all in on last year.
And you know what? I'm probably going to move Breece Hall ahead of him now that I think about it.
Hey, there we go. Well, we'll start it off then regardless. For now, our tentative RB12 Breece Hall, like you said, after the recording, probably going to end up being the RB11 consensus once you move him up. But he had everything go wrong last year, and yet his points per game average were better than Jonathan Taylor going into the fantasy football playoffs.
Yeah, 15.1 PPR points per game, RB17 in PPR. Again, you spent a mid-first round pick on this guy.
He's a bust.
He was a bust, objectively. He was not as good as you thought he was going to be, but he did enter the year banged up. There was some training camp stuff. He suffered a knee injury in week 13 as well. This is the same dude. I just want to turn back the clock on Breece Hall for a second, because this is the same guy that in 2023, 1 year removed from a torn ACL, was the RB6 in PPR points per game, with Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle as his quarterbacks. He was a 20-plus PPR point per game scorer after Robert Saleh, I believe it was week 5 of 2023, said the training wheels are off. Because at the beginning of the season, they were ramping him up, and then he got his full workload, and he was like literally dominant and won people championships. He's averaged at least 4.5 targets per game all 3 years of his career, including his rookie season, which he wasn't even the starter until like week 3, week 4 of that year, and then tore his ACL a couple weeks later. He's ranked top 5 in total targets the last 2 seasons at the running back position. And again, he's been dealing with injuries and that kind of stuff. Breece has been a workhorse all 3 years he's been a pro. Breece has been a workhorse every year of his college career, going back to his prospect profile. And Aaron Glenn can hype up Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen all he wants. But Breece Hall is better than those players. He just simply is a better running back when he is right. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully they still view him that way. That's the biggest question mark right now, is his workload going to stay the same? But RB12 or RB11, where we're going to have him ranked after I move him up, might seem high for some people, given that he was RB17 in points per game last year. But if his floor was 15 points per game and the vibes were terrible, the New York Jets were just a complete and utter train wreck, especially in the red zone. You have Rodgers ruining everybody's opinion of the whole team. The coaching staff gets fired randomly in like week 4. The run scheme was terrible with Nathaniel Hackett half the year. The O-line gets some improvements. They had Membu in the draft. Wilson seems like he's going to be playing with a little bit more of a chip on his shoulder this year. Justin Fields can run the football. That's going to help efficiency-wise for Breece Hall. He's just such an easy click to me, honestly.
I mean, it's simple, too. Going back to what we mentioned earlier, he's got a legitimate pathway to be the number 2 receiving target on his team yet again. There's no Devontae Adams back in New York. We know Garrett Wilson's going to get his 150, 160 targets, but even if this is a lower passing volume team with Fields in relation to what it was with Rodgers, he's got 70, 75, 80-plus target upside just being the number 2 weapon on the offense.
It's not even upside. He's already done that every year. He's already been that kind of level of receiving back. And it's not just because he had Aaron Rodgers, who's old and came off an Achilles tear, or Zach Wilson, who's not a good quarterback. They throw him the ball because they schemed him up plays. And I think that think of where Aaron Glenn came from. They had Jahmyr Gibbs as a receiving back. Yeah,
and on top of that, hey, if Aaron Glenn keeps wanting to hype up, Isaiah Davis, Braylon Allen, maybe that's more indicative that Breece Hall's on the move. And in fact, there's many other situations there. You plug Breece Hall in, you can make the case RB11's too low. What if he got traded to the Dallas Cowboys in August?
Yeah, again, I think the Jets will end up keeping him.
Just a theoretical.
Just a theoretical, for sure. Let's move in. I just think he's a good value. And again, on Underdog, you can get him 3-4 turn for a guy that last year I said was one of the safest picks in the first round. And again, did he have a great season?
No, so did I, though.
He was RB 17 in points per game, 15 PPR points per game, but everything went wrong. He couldn't stay healthy. Rodgers was bad. The offense was terrible. The coaching staff was the big issue that we had with him potentially, losing last year. And that ended up playing itself out. And the coaching staff was a train wreck and Rodgers was a train wreck. But anyways, let's move into RB 13.
Vanilla ice cream.
Yeah. Kyren Williams of the Los Angeles Rams, efficiency regressed big time from his breakout RB2 overall season in 2023. In 2023, Kyren Williams was legitimately one of the best running backs in football. It wasn't just that he got a big workload, because he did have a massive workload both last year and the year before. He led all running backs last year with an 88% snap share, 82% opportunity share. So that is we're talking bell cow usage. This isn't feature back. This isn't starting running back. This is bell cow usage. 16 total touchdowns, over 350 total opportunities. The question for Kyren now is, does that continue?
I don't think it does.
Because the line, pretty good. Offense, I think we expect it to be very good. Yep. Kyren Williams probably has better efficiency, I would say, than 4.1 yards per carry with a healthy Puka. Adams added.
4.4, 4.5 maybe.
Terrence Ferguson, it sounds like they're really high on him. He could be a sneaky contributor. My question really is, how much does Jarquez Hunter, who they seem to be very high on, who they drafted in the 4th round, traded up for in the draft, who gives them an explosive element to their offense, and Blake Corum, who they drafted in the 3rd round from Michigan, how much do these guys take away? Because we heard this last year that Kyren was going to have a lower workload, and he actually had a bigger workload. Yes. Is that more Corum wasn't good, and Jarquez Hunter would be the guy that would work in? It's really all about how much is his workload. Because if he gets 80% of the opportunities, he's going to be a top 10 running back.
So the way I view it, and why they went out of their way to select Jarquez Hunter in the 4th round, because like you said, they used a 3rd on a running back last year. They didn't need to go and draft Jarquez Hunter. But if you guys have been keeping tabs on everything Sean McVay has said this offseason, they looked at the duality, the versatility of the Tampa Bay run scheme last year with Liam Cohn, having Bucky Irving, having a more physical between the tackles guy with Rashad White, and realizing We have two Kyren Williams on our team right now. Blake Corum and Kyren Williams are my between the tackles, gritty running backs, going to not go down on first contact. That is what they are. Just a set of physical tone run between the tackles. Because there was so much overlap on skill and Kyren was just a better version of Blake Corum, I think that's why McVay said, well, if they're going to provide me the same thing, I'm just going to keep playing the better player at this point in their careers. I think they went and sought out a back like Jarquez Hunter, a space back, explosive, really good athlete, big play type of potential. We saw it on display time and time again with Auburn. I think he saw that type of upside, saw what Bucky Irving did to the run scheme with Tampa Bay and realized we need more versatility. We need more run scheme looks. That's why I'm higher in Dynasty, respectively, on Jarquez Hunter than you are. He was one of my favorite sleepers, the late round 3, early round 4 range, because I do think he can have a legitimate role in year 1, being that space back, being, a potential receiving back, a Jaylen Warren type for what the Pittsburgh Steelers had next to Najee.
Yeah, and I think that's totally fair. Ultimately, I think we'll see what happens in training camp because I also think it's possible that, Kyren Williams wants a contract extension and maybe that would play itself out. We don't know. We really don't know with this Rams backfield. All I know for sure is that Kyren Williams is probably set to have a little bit of an efficiency bounce back. And I believe in the Rams offense to score points. So even if he's a 60, 70% opportunity share guy, I still think Kyren can be a top 15 running back in fantasy. It's just the question is, does he still get that monster 88% opportunity share or whatever that he got last year when he finished RB10? Because you'll take RB10 points per game. At RB13 or wherever we have him ranked right now, and you're getting him kind of 2-3 turn area, you'll take RB10 points per game all day.
Yeah, and again, I think he might go a little bit higher in your home leagues just because people are going to look at the production last year. The Rams offense obviously projecting well, maybe aren't as in tune about Jarquez Hunter getting added in the draft. Like in your home leagues, I think he's going to be closer to like the top 25, 2-3 turn.
Yeah, absolutely. So he's an interesting one for sure. Maybe going to vary a little bit, home leagues to sharp leagues to underdog and that kind of thing. Let's check out Chuba Hubbard here, who I think got to be one of the best running back values on the board for sure. I think he's going like 4th, 5th, 6th round, maybe even on underdog. Like this dude,
3-4 turn he's worth.
Yeah, coming off of a 16.1 PPR point per game season, he was a Pro Bowler, RB13 in points per game, and now I believe a lot more in the Carolina Panthers this time right now than I did a year ago.
Well, yeah, we're a lot more optimistic on Carolina this year as opposed to even what we were last year because we saw evident improvement from this offense. The scheme ran by Dave Canales. Obviously, Bryce Young improving down the stretch. Rebuilt offensive line last offseason. And Chuba Hubbard flourished. Like, he was legitimately really efficient, one of the best running backs in the league. And despite starting slow in his first 2 games of the year, whether it was, not getting the full workload, offense kind of like still figuring out the scheme, whatever it was, in the games he played 60+% of the snaps, which was week 3 on, he averaged 17.9 PPR points per game, which would have ranked as the 2024 RB6 across the full year. Offense, like we said, continually improved. Bryce Young, a quarterback that we both believe in. And now they had a legit established wide receiver 1 with the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. Tet McMillan coming over, year 2 entering this Canal scheme. Well, I do think there could be the case that he could lose volume. Rico Dowdle coming in, Trevor Etienne drafted in the draft. Whatever slightly lessened workload he may see in 2025 in relation to 2024, I think will be offset by the offense taking another step up.
Yeah. I don't really disagree with anything there. I think, and I absolutely was, ranking Chuba Hubbard over Jonathan Taylor for the majority of the year in weekly rankings videos because it was evident that he was getting the same workload, only playing a lot better. And even though the offense at that time was not very good with Carolina, like Chuba Hubbard was the whole offense. Like they would score 10 points and Chuba Hubbard would have 20 fantasy points. Yeah. Like that's hard to do. Like you get an offense that he was almost like the Malik Neighbors of running backs, where Malik Neighbors was the whole Giants offense on through the air. Anytime they threw the ball, it was to Malik Neighbors. Anytime they moved the offense, scored any touchdowns, it was pretty much Chuba Hubbard every time. So if they go from being a bottom 5 offense, Bryce Young plays, to the level of his draft capital. They add McMillan, Leggett stays healthy this year, Coker, Thielen, those guys. They could be a league average offense, and similar to the Atlanta Falcons point, it's going to be a high-scoring division. Lots of games where, they're going to have to put up points to win. Like, I love Chuba Hubbard, man. You start your draft with, in a home league, let's say Chuba Hubbard goes 4th, 5th round, somewhere like that. You start your draft with 3, stable assets, 1 elite running back, 2 elite wide receivers. Maybe you deviate in the 4th round for a quarterback or a George Kittle or something like that. Yeah. And then you can grab Chuba Hubbard as like your RB2 or whatever. Like, We don't preach taking dead zone running backs very often, but I don't see dead zone running backs who were former Pro Bowlers who were top 7 running backs when they got a workload.
Dude, even if you're in a full PPR league and he's your RB1 because you got him at the 501 or you got him at the end of the 4th round. Let's just say, for example, you're picking at the 101 and you started Jamar Chase, Lab McConkey, and Josh Allen in your first 3 rounds. And you want to wrap around and get him as your RB1 at the back of the 4th. I think that's a great start.
Yeah, absolutely. He is such a good projection, man. I think people are really, really sleeping on Chuba Hubbard. And I could say the same maybe for Joe Mixon as well. Joe Mixon, of course, been a stable dunking on the two of us for the last couple of years because we're always, this is the year Joe Mixon's going to fall off. And of course, this year is the year I actually feel kind of decent about him, and he's probably going to fall off now.
Well, he did fall off a little bit at the end of last year.
Well, I'll get to that. He was the RB9 overall in points per game. That is great. That's a great finish. I mean, the Texans, good offense. I would expect CJ Stroud to probably play better this year than he played last year and probably play more in line with what he did as a rookie. And Mixon is still playing well. Like, I mean, especially the first month of the season, he looked like one of the best running backs in football. However, there are 3 major concerns keeping Mixon at RB15 for us versus kind of maybe I've seen some other people have him RB8, RB9, something like that. Number 1, lowest receptions per game total in 4 years. They add Woody Marks in the draft. The receiving...
Pure third down back.
He's a pure third down back. The receiving upside's probably not there for Joe Mixon at this point in his career. Number 2, Texans O-line was already bad last year, and they lost their best offensive lineman in Laramie Tunsil, who they traded to the Washington Commanders. It's undergoing a retool, a rebuild of their offensive line. Maybe first half of the season, we don't see a lot of great run blocking efficiency. Number 3, and this is the most important, Mixon himself was so much better in the first half of the year. Weeks 1 to 11, 21.38 carries per game. So absolute workhorse. Rushed for 100 plus yards in 6 of 8 games. 11 of his 14 touchdowns on the season came in that weeks 1 to 11 stretch. And again, keep in mind, he actually was banged up, I think week 4 or week 5 on Sunday Night Football. He was left early. We thought he might get injured.
That's including those games?
Yeah, that's including those games. Week 12 onward, 12.83 carries per game. So the workload went down big time. 3.36 yards per carry as well during that time, and no more than 3 targets in any single game, and only 12.1 fantasy points per game over that stretch. So you're looking at a guy who, you know, understandably so, he's an older running back, was much better at the beginning of the year. And in redraft leagues, that can play. You can draft a guy, he has a great start to the season. You could flip him later on for a younger running back. But best ball or leagues that you're not able to trade very much, I would be a little bit wary that Joe Mixon's going to be just dominant all year.
So those negatives are more so why he's at my RB17. Again, via consensus, he ends up getting to RB15 here. I think you pretty much outlined it. Like, yeah, if he stays fully healthy and he can carry that level of play throughout the year, like, he's one of the steals in the draft. The issue is to get to RB9, like he was the RB2, RB3 across the majority of the year. And then when you needed him most, he just didn't show up. And I don't see anything this year projecting into the Texans that wouldn't make me believe that to be the case. Joe Mixon has suffered injuries in the past. Joe Mixon has shown signs of regression in terms of aging in the last couple of years. Like, if the efficiency is really down and they can't move the football, what's stopping them from putting Woody Marks on the field and committing full to the passing game?
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think the Texans will be a bad offense by any means, but it might be a lot
of... It's like the Derrick Henry, Justice Hill effect, except imagine if the Ravens couldn't run the football.
Yeah, or if they were just had a much worse team projection, win total wise, and that kind of thing. And Lamar playing obviously better than CJ Stroud at the moment. So yeah, it's tough with Mixon, man. Like at the same time, it's like, dude, volume's volume. Like he's going to carry the ball like 18, 20 times a game. But at the same time also, you're like, are those good carries? Is that good volume if the receptions aren't there, if the goal line equity maybe isn't there, if the efficiency isn't there, which it really hasn't been for Joe Mixon the last couple of years even. But he's a tough one, man. You got to take the volume at a certain point, you know, come 4th, 5th round or whatever. But I'd probably lean wide receiver, relatively speaking, where he goes.
Yeah, and for full transparency, I will have Joe Mixon ranked above this next guy in my week 1 rankings. But the reason why I would take Omarion Hampton over Joe Mixon in my drafts right now is the level of upside we could be dealing with, especially in the consequential weeks. First and foremost, Omarion Hampton gets first-round investment to a team that was 31st in pass rate over expectation weeks 1 to 7, that has already shown that they want to run the piss out of the football. We saw Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. We saw Jim Harbaugh with the 49ers. We've seen Greg Roman both with his stop with the Chargers and his stop with the Ravens, where the Ravens were at historically low passing volume rates. This team wants to be a run the football identity. They want to have a top 5 rush attack in football. Like I said, Greg Roman, strong offensive line, Jim Harbaugh. They go out there this season and they say, you know, we might need a number 2 wide receiver in the first round. We might need some more help on defense. You know what they do? They spend the 22nd overall pick on a workhorse Jonathan Taylor level upside running back. Najee Harris, people might be worried about. Najee Harris signed a minimum guarantee with upside accelerators in that deal. I'm assuming that was kicked in. If Omarion Hampton wasn't there at 22, they were comfortable rolling Najee out at the beginning of the year and maybe a second, third, or fourth round running back. But that doesn't matter anymore. They drafted one in the first round. The 3 comparable prospects, in my opinion, to Omarion Hampton are 2 comparables, guys that I view in close relation to how I think Omarion Hampton's rookie season will outline. 22nd overall pick Omarion Hampton, 34th overall pick Nick Chubb, 41st overall pick Jonathan Taylor. Yeah, I think Najee Harris could play an immediate role like Carlos Hyde did for Nick Chubb, like Marlon Mack did for JT. But when both those guys got the workload down the stretch, they were fantasy football league winners. Nick Chubb, week 7 on, 16.4 PPR points per game in his rookie season. Jonathan Taylor, now I'm not saying Omarion Hampton's going to go out there and do this, but week 11 on in his rookie year averaged 24.3 PPR points per game. Neither had the insulation to the type of situation we have with the LA Chargers. Neither had a top 5 level offensive line. Neither had a commitment to the run game like Harbaugh, like Greg Roman will have. The ceiling here is a top 5 running back.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense why he would be ranked where we have him ranked here. Again, like you said, early season, that could be annoying. Najee's probably going to work into the backfield a little bit more than we would like. But if you draft Omarion Hampton in your redraft league in the 5th round or whatever, and you trust your drafting ability, maybe you draft a Bijan Robinson in round 9 to kind of make up for it. If you can't start Omarion Hampton right away, you draft like a B-Rob in round 9 so you can play him over Omarion Hampton for those first couple of games. But if you feel confident, hey, I'm going to make the playoffs, and again, we'll probably talk about Omarion Hampton come week 4, week 5 of the season as like a trade target and that kind of thing. So yeah, you kind of do have to eat the early season production a little bit, and especially as it relates
He's like the inverse Mixon.
Yeah, especially as it relates to best ball too. Like that's where all the money is in week 17. Like you want a guy like Omarion Hampton in that type of format, because if he does do what Jonathan Taylor did, which is 24 points per game or whatever, it's very possible that come fast forward right now, week 17 running back rankings tier list for the fantasy championship, Omarion Hampton might be like my RB3 on the week or something like that.
When you have a guy with that level of upside, like we pictured with a Christian McCaffrey, like we pictured with a Jahmyr Gibbs with no David Montgomery, when you can just close your eyes and envision, okay, there is a scenario where I have this guy as a top 3 overall ranked player at his position in the money weeks, it's a guy you should be targeting if it's a 5th round pick.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So moving into James Cook, we'll try and speed these up here within the next 15 minutes or so. James Cook, kind of like cheaper Bucky Irving. I can make the case on James Cook pretty easily. You're betting on a guy who's not going to get an elite workload, but he is in a great offense, an offense that doesn't really have a number 1 receiver or anything like that, so he can carve out a pass catching role. He obviously had 13.7 carries and 2.3 targets per game last year, which is kind of a ho-hum workload, but yet finished as the RB11 in points per game and was an elite return on investment for those of you guys drafted him like the 4th round or whatever, because he had 16 rushing touchdowns and averaged 5 yards per carry. Aside from holdout concerns, which right now I would say factor into my rankings. Otherwise, I might have him over a Joe Mixon potentially, depending on what you think of, how you want to build your teams or whatever. James Cook is just a kind of a rock solid projection. It's just the problem is he doesn't get that type of workload. And I would expect, Ray Davis to carry the ball a little bit. Josh Allen's going to take away some goal line stuff here and there. But regardless, you feel pretty good about James Cook being a solid RB2 for your team in round 4, round 5.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to picture him getting a heightened workload after we literally already saw a rookie Ray Davis. Ty Johnson figured in, especially in the passing game too. It's another thing. We expected James Cook to potentially be, the number 2, number 3 overall weapon in the passing game, and 2.3 targets per game just simply isn't going to cut it. This guy got there last year on the back of rushing touchdowns, 16 rushing touchdowns. You look across his career, I don't think it adds up to 16.
No.
Before the year.
Yeah, no, I think he had 11 or 12 goal line carries last year, and that was more than all 2 years of his career combined, and probably double that. He was mainly just a goal line back last year, and of course he was the efficiency back, the efficient carries and that kind of thing. But it also took his quarterback winning MVP for the offense to be this good so that he could score that many touchdowns, which is no guarantee. I mean, Josh Allen, we both expect to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league again, but you never know. Sometimes elite quarterbacks have down seasons, and if that happens to James Cook, I mean, he's going to be a huge disappointment relative to ADP. So what you're hoping for, honestly, if you have James Cook in Dynasty or if you want to draft James Cook, is that they give him a lot of money so that they maybe give him a bigger workload, especially through the passing game. Like 13.7 carries per game, that's fine. You can work in Ray Davis as much as you want in that area of the carry workload, but he's probably got to be a 4 or 5 target per game guy.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to for me. If he does see a high workload, like he actually got, I believe, more overall volume. You guys can stat correct that if you like at home in 2023 than he did in 2024. And in 2023, we're actually making the case like, hey, like what if he actually has some more positive TD regression and the workload will increase going into year 3 versus year 2? But he did better in fantasy with the workload going down.
Yeah, and mainly, again, it was because his quarterback won the MVP and he had all those rushing touchdowns and he finally got that goal line roll, which is what you and I were screaming from the mountaintops. As we were big James Cook guys last year. So I'm glad he paid off. A little bit worried about this season without a contract. Again, that also kind of murks things up a little bit. But let's move into the next tier of running backs. We can kind of rattle through these. Kenneth Walker, Alvin Kamara, the first 2 guys that we have here. With Kenneth Walker, RB12 in points per game last year was very good. However, that required a big bump in targets. 4.8 targets per game. I think that would shock a lot of people. Saying that Kenneth Walker had double the amount of targets per game as James Cook would shock a lot of people last year because Ryan Grubb just absolutely aired it out all the time. Is that going to continue under Clint Kubiak? We don't know. Also, Kenneth Walker has like a chronic oblique/groin injury that he keeps dealing with every single year. Some nagging lower body injuries, some shoulder stuff. He's still just 24. The new coaching staff is saying all the right things. But you and I are both kind of on the same page that Zach Charbonnet is probably just as good as Kenneth Walker.
Yeah.
And maybe that factors into the ultimate ceiling here. I think with Kenneth Walker, when things are going right and he's on the field and he's playing at a high level.
There's like a 5-game stretch where we had him ranked, like, is he the RB4 rest of the season?
Yeah, he's a big play merchant. That's what he does. He breaks off long runs. He scores touchdowns. He does those kind of things. He's kind of like a Jonathan Taylor type of projection when he's at his best. The problem is Jonathan Taylor gets a bigger workload, and the Seahawks, we'll see what the offense looks like without Geno Smith. We have no idea, but Kenneth Walker probably going to finish anywhere between like RB20 in points per game to RB maybe 8 or 9 on a best case scenario. But you got to worry about the injury stuff. You got to worry about Charbonnet eating into the workload. He's a lot less of a clean projection. But come 4th, 5th round, if you need an RB1 on a 0 RB team, I'm actually okay taking Kenneth Walker this year. I don't feel too bad about taking him.
I think schematically, so it's funny because obviously the transition to DK to Cooper Kupp is going to be a fascinating topic. In fact, one we'll delve into a little bit more when we talk about the wide receiver episode. But specifically for the run game too, I do think it matters that you're going from a legitimate stud that can affect the third level of the field and space everything out to the offense to a guy that was one of the worst separators in the league that can only play from the slot in this point of his career. So I don't think from a schematic perspective, enough people are talking about the impact of losing DK. And who knows, maybe, MVS is going to be out there, sacrificial X, they're going to run 11 personnel every freaking play of every freaking game. But when they are in 12 personnel and it's just JSN and Cooper Kupp on the field, defenses are not respecting the third level at all.
No, unless Torrey Horton becomes an absolute dude because he has 4.41 speed. He can stretch the field. But, I mean, Metcalf is Metcalf. Like, you're scared of the big play with DK Metcalf. That's the one. It's the one thing DK Metcalf does better than most receivers in the league.
Question for you. Who do you think runs faster at this point in their careers, Adam Thielen or Cooper Kupp?
Yeah, it's probably a toss-up at that point in time. Neither of them were really fast to begin with. So, Kenneth Walker, again, good, solid RB2 projection, I would say. But you and I usually are on the page of we'll probably get our running backs early so we don't have to draft a guy like Kenneth Walker if we want to get running backs, or we'll kind of punt this area of the running back board into wide receiver archetypes that we can take here. This is the type of range where you're going to be taking like a Tedero, a McMillan, an Xavier Worthy, a Rashee Rice potentially, maybe his former teammate DK Metcalf kind of going in this range of the draft. I would probably rather take those wide receivers and, make sure I get a running back or two early so I don't have to take a guy like Kenneth Walker. But he's not a terrible click. At the end of the 4th round, early 5th round, maybe mid 5th round, I'd be okay taking him at that point.
Yeah, I think he's reasonable there. Like, for example, he went, round 6 in the Flock League last year? And
which is a value. Yeah, if he goes that low, I think that's a good pick.
Yeah, so Kenneth Walker, low on RB2. Don't think you can have him really too much higher than this, but also don't think you can have him really too much lower than this. Like, I think his range, honestly, is like RB 16 to 21 in people's rankings.
Yeah, he's kind of a September and October merchant, too.
Yeah.
So if you're in a league that's very active trading-wise, you'll probably be able to sell high on him after, like, week 4.
Him and Joe Mixon.
Yeah, they're both, like, guys in managed redraft leagues that we do need to kind of think before they suffer any injuries, they're probably going to be a lot better than where we currently have them ranked.
Another one.
Yeah, another one. Alvin Kamara. At 29, 28, and 27 years old, on bad offenses, Alvin Kamara has been RB5, RB3, and RB13 in points per game, which you could argue RB19 is disrespectful based on that type of production. Yeah. The Saints are on a one-way bullet train to the first overall pick in the draft. They're terrible. They're a terrible team. They have Tyler Shuck and Spencer Rattler battling to play quarterback for them, and in the 4 games that Derek Carr missed that Kamara played in, so you had like Rattler at quarterback, Kamara did still have over 17 PPR points per game in 3 of those games, and he had a total of 31 targets. So the way Kamara gets there is leading this position in targets, which he's done pretty much the last couple of years. So if you're going to draft Alvin Kamara, just keep in mind that you're probably going to want to close your eyes when he's playing.
Yeah,
but
don't watch it.
He'll probably have, like, he had 6.4 targets and 6.7 targets per game the last 2 years, and I would expect that to continue even if you're super high on Devin Neal like we were, and Devin Neal takes away some early down stuff.
There will be a couple games where he catches 11 balls for 43 yards. Like, you guys have to be ready for that.
PPR merchant, like Alvin Kamara.
And again, we have him ranked at 19 because we think the bottom could fall out. Like, for example, as good as Devon Achane is, the bottom fell out when the Miami Dolphins offensive line got banged up. I would wager a guess that the Saints offensive line at this point, especially with Ramczyk retiring, isn't much better. Like, the risk level is you don't even have a in your prime level player, which Devon Achane is. You have a 30-year-old running back. Like, if the wheels fall off and this offense is terrible and Alvin Kamara's efficiency doesn't pop up on top of it, like you said here, if Devin Neal, a guy that we both liked, again, not a superstar level prospect, but a guy that we said he can make a dent in an NFL running back rotation, if this becomes a Alvin Kamara show to a, oh, well, Devin Neal's actually getting like 35% of the work now, 65% of the work on this offense will not cut it.
Yeah, I tend to think that Kamara will fall in sharp leagues, and I'll take some swings on him there. But in casual home leagues, I mean, they're going to look at the PPR points per game the last couple of years and the fact that he's one of the best running backs of this generation, especially from fantasy perspective. I would guess he'll probably go in like the 3rd, 4th round of some people's leagues and manage redraft, but 5th, 6th round in sharper leagues, I'm totally cool with. I might go out on a limb here and say that the running back dead zone backs this year I can make a case that all of them are kind of actually good bets. And depending on the receiver and quarterback and tight end.
Shout out the UD ADP.
Like the underdog ADP is really making a dent in the running back position. I'm not going to overreact to the running back renaissance that we saw in fantasy football last year. But when you're getting a guy who's been a multi-time RB1 who can catch 70, 80 passes in the 6th round because sharp leagues don't want to take him because he's on the Saints, I'm okay with that, man. Just close your eyes. Don't watch the games. He's going to be buried in the 1 p.m. window anyways. Like, Kamara's going to be hard to pass on, to be honest.
How many primetime games did the Saints actually have this
0
year? Oh, they actually have 0?
Yeah, they actually have 0.
Oh, my God. Validly so. But we'll move on to a team that I believe has more than 0.
Yep.
You can correct me if I'm wrong there. Number 20, running back TreVeyon Henderson goes 38th overall to the New England Patriots. And when you actually look at the historical hit rates of similar range prospects, which you've done research on all offseason, Breece Hall in this tier, 16.4 PPR points per game in his rookie year prior to his ACL tear. Dalvin Cook, it's almost hilarious that they're back-to-back because they both had 16.4 PPR points per game prior to what? I believe Breece Hall was a week 5 ACL tear and Dalvin Cook's was like a week 4 or 5 in his rookie year.
Yeah, they both blew their knee out their rookie season, which is unfortunate. And by the way, Dalvin Cook had a legendary season, his 4th season in the NFL, and Breece Hall's entering his 4th season in the NFL.
It might be reading the tea leaves on that one. Kenneth Walker, 13.5. DeAndre Swift, 14.6. Derrick Henry was also in this tier, but I kind of left them out for the data study simply because DeMarco Murray was like a 1,300-yard rusher his rookie year, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was very clearly the lead back that season.
And then Nick Chubb, like I mentioned earlier, 12.2 before he got the workload over Carlos Hyde, but down the stretch, like I mentioned with Omarion Hampton, legitimately an RB1 level producer. And as we go down here in terms of where those all rank respectively in points per game, as we can see here, RB13, RB13, RB21, RB19, and then the Nick Chubb year, RB25 on the season, RB12 in terms of the split that he was the full-time workload. Now, I kind of view it as being, well, I respect Ramondre Stevenson enough to the point where I'm not going to rank TreVeyon Henderson like RB15 on the season, But I also acknowledge that they just spent, with a new regime, Mike Vrabel coming in, quarterback we both believe in with Drake May, obviously now Josh McDaniels calling the offense. They drafted this guy at 38th on a team that needs ready-made receiving weapons. TreVeyon Henderson, why can't he be a juiced-up version of what James White was?
Yeah, dude, like TreVeyon Henderson, I think the way he gets there, the way he like smashes, like he crushes his rookie season, is he might legitimately have 95 receptions. Like he could actually catch that many balls because he is a ready-made pass protector at the running back position, and he was extremely efficient as a receiver at Ohio State. And his Ohio State teammate is going to be the guy that we talk about next, in Quinshon Judkins, and they're both like kind of similar levels of prospect, but they were getting offers to beat their door down for TreVeyon Henderson, the New England Patriots. You could definitely argue that you could have gone into the season with Stevenson and a 4th round Dylan Sampson or something like that and been fine at the running back position. But they determined, hey, we're throwing as many weapons at Drake May as we possibly can. We got Stephon Diggs, who somehow doesn't even have a knee brace on right now. Did you see that video?
That's another one too. I was actually going to tell you this morning. I realized, I'm like, wait, like the market has Stephon Diggs at like wide receiver 42 right now. Like I moved him up to like wide receiver 33 because I'm like, dude, if he's healthy week 1, he's the number 1 receiver for Drake May. Like either we have TreVeyon Henderson criminally too low, or Stephon Diggs is going to be a top 24 receiver in the first 5 weeks of the year.
And we both believe that Drake May can be just an absolute stud quarterback this year. And Kyle Williams looks like he's having a nice little rookie mini camp too. So this offense is on the up and up. They also had a horrible tackles last year, like the worst offensive tackles you could possibly imagine. They draft one at 4 and they signed Morgan Moses, who is a veteran, capable right tackle for them. Like
40% of the O-line.
This offense, maybe there's some growing pains early on in the season. Josh McDaniels, big difference also play caller wise, not head coach, play caller wise. Mike Vrabel, just the culture changer kind of that team. This could be a really, really surprising level offense to the tune of what the Commanders were last year, to the tune of what the Texans were 2 years ago.
And because of the upside, like I said, that's the archetype of running back I prefer in this range. That's why I have Omarion Hampton higher than when you do. And I actually have both of these rookie running backs with Henderson and with Judkins over the veteran running backs like, Walker, Kamara, and I believe Mixon. I'm not 100% sure. You guys can fact check me on that if you have our rankings on Flock. But regardless, like I would just rather take the reroll on the young upside with guys that I believe are going to get a workload. Yeah, and again, similar to what we said about Hampton and what we'll say about Judkins here in a second, is like maybe plan for this. Balance it.
Draft an extra running back in round 8 or 9, Brian Robinson type, DeAndre Swift type, who you can use maybe early on in the year if TreVeyon Henderson maybe isn't startable till like week 3, week 4, something like that. Like really, it's fun because you have these upside shots in this range. Like, doesn't mean you have to take 2 upside shots. Like you could take 1 and you could take a steady workload guy, or you can take, Judkins plus, Walker, or Mixon plus TreVeyon Henderson. Like it doesn't really matter. What we're basically saying is we want access to these guys. We just have to make sure that you can stomach the early season of them. Yeah, because when guys actually have 17, 18, 19 PPR point per game upside, they go in the 1st or 2nd round. And the rookies are usually the only way you can kind of find that without spending that kind of capital on the position. Yeah, Bucky Irving's a good example of that. Of course, Breece Hall, his rookie season, a good example of that before he tore his ACL. But let's move into Judkins, who, unlike Ramondre Stevenson, doesn't really have any competition for touches other than Dylan Sampson, who's also another rookie, but he's a 4th round pick. I mean, Judkins was a top 40 NFL draft pick and goes to a Browns team that has a good offensive line, has a good run coordinator in Kevin Stefanski. Judkins fits the profile to kind of do exactly what Nick Chubb did as a rookie himself. Yeah, I mean, unlike Stevenson, again, I loved Dylan Sampson, the prospect. He was a top 5 running back for me in the class, but Stevenson is a bigger threat for touches right away than Sampson, quite simply because of the fact that Quinshon Judkins went how many picks before Dylan Sampson in the same draft? Yeah, not to mention Stevenson is making a lot of money and has been an RB1 in the past in the NFL. I think Sampson will have a dent in terms of maybe Judkins being a Jonathan Taylor level workhorse, sure. But at the same time, Sampson is a space back. Judkins is a between the tackles, all 3 downs capable player, 220 plus pound size, lead athlete, top 40 draft capital. Like, yeah, we can have question marks in terms of what exactly the split will be or how good this Browns offense will be. But at the end of the day, if this guy can profile into a workhorse with size and speed that can play on all 3 downs, RB21 feels so cheap, man. It feels such an easy click when you're in the 7th round of your drafts. You got Quinshon Judkins staring you in the face. Yeah, I mean, he's a 0 RB target for sure. Like the Browns offense, I don't think we're sugarcoating how bad they're going to potentially be, but like If Joe Flacco,
They might be bottom one.
Yeah, they might be one of the worst offenses in the league, but at the same time, like Joe Flacco behind a good offensive line on this exact team won comeback player of the year 2 years ago. Yeah. Like this could be like, oh, this is kind of, organized chaos where it's like, okay, like it's a functional offense, like what they were with Jameis when Jerry Jeudy was like an elite receiver down the stretch last year. Like when you have a dude who's this big, who's this great of a prospect, 220 plus pound size, top 40 draft capital, like best comparables to some of the guys that we mentioned already. Like how does he not have a great workload his rookie season?
Yeah. And even if the offense as a whole overall isn't, world beating or quite frankly, bottom 3 in the league, they're probably going to be way worse from a passing perspective. Like, they still got a solid offensive line. I still trust Stefanski to scheme a good run game. And Quinshon Judkins is a talented enough back where if he's getting 20 touches per game, he could easily be an RB2 in fantasy.
Yeah, I would not be shocked if he outscores like Mixon, Kenneth Walker, Kamara, some of the guys that we talked about. It would, like from week 1 to, of all the rookies that we talked about, Hampton, Henderson, and obviously not Jeanty because he's Jeanty.
He's different.
I actually think that Judkins might be the best through the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season than Hampton and then Henderson is because like you said, Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson, who's a fellow 4th round rookie. Like, there's a good chance that Judkins starts with a 70% opportunity share by week 1.
And if that's the case, I mean, I already outlined, the top 10 caliber backs. I'm not saying obviously 36 versus 10, but like you saw the difference between somebody getting a sub 60% opportunity share versus above a 60% opportunity share. Heck, the difference in the qualifier when I was mentioning it for Jeanty was like a 3-point per game difference. Yeah. And they're all elite backs.
You want to talk about opportunity bundles. Would you rather have a mid-second round Jonathan Taylor and let's say Jordan Addison, where Quinshon Judkins goes, or maybe even potentially worse of a receiver?
Probably, you gotta be like, you might be lucky.
Jacoby Myers or Darnell
Debo
Mooney.
Samuel.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe not that quick.
Or would you rather have Quinshon Judkins and AJ Brown? Yeah, or Ladd McConkey? Like that's a pretty good opportunity bundle trade-off if you're able to get Judkins way later than where Jonathan Taylor goes.
Can you guarantee me both are healthy week 17 that you're going to have Jonathan Taylor 100% over Quinshon Judkins?
Yeah, like, and who knows? Like, I don't think that Shedeur is a world beater quarterback, but like, who knows? Maybe he comes out, he starts after week 6 or something, and he's a functional starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, regardless. Shedeur, Joe Flacco, even fucking like what? Kenny Pickett? Is Kenny Pickett really objectively worse than what they had last year? Dorian Thompson-Robinson started games?
Yeah, Jameis started games last year. Yeah, like Judkins, respect the draft capital, the size, the speed, the athleticism, all that stuff. Let's move into the last 3 guys here. We can group these next 2 together because they're really straightforward. David Montgomery, RB 15 and 16 the last 2 years. Without Ben Johnson, I worry about the run game efficiency, and 32 touchdowns between David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs last year is a lot of touchdowns, man. The extreme efficiency too for Montgomery as a receiver. He had the 32nd most targets at the running back position last year, which is 38, but he had the 16th most receiving yards at 341, and he caught all but 2 of his targets. He had 38 targets, and he caught 36 of them.
So let me ask you, do you think that's more of a product of, there's just so much space because Ben Johnson's a wizard of a schemer?
Yes.
Because that would be my answer to that.
Goff is accurate, and most of Montgomery's targets are like screen passes and things that you draw up for him because he's not Gibbs as a route runner or anything like that. No. But it's actually worth noting that Montgomery did require an outlier receiving skill set, because he was a lot worse on the ground as far as the amount of touches he was getting on the ground and also the touchdown opportunity from his Gibbs' rookie season. Yeah. Montgomery had a lot more touchdowns that year. So that's kind of the difference here with Montgomery. If you're drafting a 0 RB 7th round running back and you just want early season volume because let's say you drafted Quinshon Judkins the round before, or maybe you're intending on taking some more upside swings later and you just want that early season 14 to 15 points per game to go along with your elite receiver core, elite onesies, Dave Montgomery's your guy, but he's probably not going to have an elite ceiling unless Jahmyr Gibbs were to get hurt.
And that's the exact point, right? The reason why he ranks RB22 for us is that aside from a Gibbs injury, it's hard for us to really picture him being like a league winner. Like, for example, compared to like Judkins, compared to Henderson, compared to some of the young running backs in this range, and even compared to the veteran similar age to David Montgomery with bigger workloads, like it's hard to picture a scenario that Montgomery, barring a Gibbs injury, finishes above those guys on a seasonal basis, at least from a ceiling perspective.
Yeah.
With Dave Montgomery, though, if Gibbs were to go down, like
he'll be a top 8 to 10 back in my weekly rankings for sure.
Like he's just a better version of what Mixon was last year.
Yeah, no, he would be a dude if Gibbs went down with an injury, which is kind of why you almost have to give him the he has like RB22 where we have him ranked. He'll probably finish better than this. Realistically, he'll probably finish
sure.
around this range, maybe even a little bit better. Even if we account for Ben Johnson, leaving and some efficiency downtick, like he was RB 15 and 16 the last 2 years. He could finish around this range where we have him ranked. But again, he ain't going anywhere near RB1 territory unless Gibbs goes down.
Yeah, and similar case to the next guy here. I think a guy that we can pretty comfortably project to be, in the teens, I would say, like anywhere between 10 to 19 is where I picture this guy end up finishing. But whether it's maybe the workload going down a little bit, uncertainty with the quarterback situation, him getting another year older. Like, what are your thoughts here on Aaron Jones? Because I think RB23 is about the status quo with where the market has him, if not a little bit above, right?
Yeah, I mean, as a self-proclaimed running back unk this year.
Yeah, you are unk.
I actually kind of like Aaron Jones where he's going in drafts because he sneakily handled 300 touches last year and finished RB20 with 14.2 PPR points per game, and he's 30 years old. But he was RB12 in expected points per game last year, and maybe he just runs hotter on touchdowns. He only had 7 touchdowns last year.
Yeah.
Jordan Mason is added to this backfield, and I think maybe people will just be like, why would I ever draft Aaron Jones when I can get Jordan Mason later? But I feel pretty good knowing that Jones is just
what's later, too? Like, on Underdog, Jordan Mason's like a 9th-round pick.
Yeah, like, to me, I look at
later?
Aaron Jones as very clearly the starter here. And even though he's like a dead zone running back because the offense, like you said, J.J. McCarthy comes in, is he going to be as good as Sam Darnold was last year? I think that's definitely up for debate. But I feel pretty good in, like, leagues that you and I play in where nobody is going to want to draft a 31-year-old running back, that you might get Aaron Jones on a 0 RB team in like round 8. And to me, I feel so good about that because this team still has Justin Jefferson, still has TJ Hawkinson, still has Jordan Addison, and Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was good last year. He still played at a high level. The only thing you got to worry about with Aaron Jones is the second he's in the medical tent, he might be untradeable. That's pretty much what you got to worry about with Jones.
Dude, no, between Walker and Aaron Jones last year, and again, it is pretty remarkable. Shout out Avery for still taking down the Flock League, but dude, he looked so sad at some point. Just like,
he had T. Higgins too, which is also another person like that.
And then when all those guys played, they were awesome. But like, he kept trying to throw those guys in trade packages, and everybody around the league is like, nah, that's urine. Like, that's trash. Like, I don't want Aaron Jones. I don't want fucking 18.5 point per game score T. Higgins. He's hurt.
Yeah,
like,
it's wild. It's wild with Aaron Jones, man. I feel pretty confident that he'll go undervalued in a lot of veteran leagues, but casual leagues, people take him in like the 4th, 5th round. I wouldn't take him that high, but round 7, round 8, 0 RB type of target, hero RB. Like, you build a hero RB. Let's say you start your draft with Bijan Robinson 103 or something like that. You grab 2 receivers, T. Higgins, Lad McConkey in the next 2 rounds. You grab maybe an elite tight end in George Kittle in round 4, hammer out a couple more wide receivers, maybe you deviate for a Patrick Mahomes or a Joe Burrow or something like that, or you just intend to take a quarterback later. And you get Aaron Jones as your RB2 after filling out 4 wide receivers, an elite tight end, and you intend to take maybe, a later round quarterback or 2 off after that. Like, I feel really good about that.
Pure Aaron Jones on your Omarion Hampton teams.
Yeah, you could feel pretty good about the way that you can play around with Aaron Jones. And the same could be said for James Conner, who's our RB24. 15.9 PPR points per game last year, RB14 in 2024, averaged 16.7 as the RB11 if you exclude that week 17 game where he ended up leaving
got hurt
early.
in like the mid-first quarter.
Yeah.
Like you said, RB11 if you exclude that game. And based off last year's finish, like, we have him RB24.
I have him a little bit higher than this. I think he's my RB21 or 22.
Yeah, I think we can both agree, though, even though you have him higher than me, we both agree in principle that there are enough red flags in terms of the age, the injury history. Again, after he got hurt in week 17 last year, still never actually recorded a full healthy season in the NFL. And the other big threat is a potential changing of the guard. We both love Trey Benson, the prospect. He was both a top 2 running back in the class for us. He's now entering year 2, showed efficiency, showed some flashes in his rookie season. Again, I'm not saying James Conner is going to cede the starting role to Trey Benson. I'm more so saying instead of James Conner being the RB12 in our rankings and Trey Benson being the RB40, I think it's going to be a closer split this year. And if Conner were to ever go down, I think the upside of Benson without Conner is a lot higher than Conner as the lead starter. But James Conner, again, he's done enough to be ranked in the top 24. He's done enough to be viewed as, in my opinion, an RB2 in fantasy. But it's more so me being optimistic that Trey Benson will take the step because I saw a starting caliber prospect when he came out. And I think that ability, I think that talent still exists.
Yeah, like, spoiler alert for like strategy videos for us this year. Like, the way I look at ADP right now, how do you not run a hero RB build with an elite workhorse that you get in round 1 or 2, fill your wide receiver core, I think punting quarterback's going to be very optimal this year, given how deep the position
Unless
is.
you got a top 4 guy, I think 5 through like fucking even 15 melts in.
You do that. You get yourself, let's say, Bijan, bunch of receivers, maybe an elite onesie here and there. How do you not pair Judkins and Connor together in round 7 and 8? Or Jones and Harvey, who we'll talk about in a second. Like, you get your early season hero RB1 or RB2, sorry, in James Conner, who by week 4 might be the RB6 in fantasy points per game, who you can flip for an Omarion Hampton type or whatever, who's having a down start to the season. And then you have that young guy for that late season upside. I think that's going to be a very optimal strategy, whether it's Connor, whether it's Jones, whether it's Montgomery. Some of the guys that we didn't even have on this list, a Tony Pollard type who doesn't even make our top 24 or top 25 running backs. I feel so good about that kind of pairing for a hero RB2 kind of production piece and potentially having an elite trade chip for the first part of the season.
Running back feels so deep this year.
It does fall off dramatically after like 33. Like once you get past Swift and some of the other guys, you're like, okay, now I'm just drafting handcuffs.
Yeah, and speaking of, formalizing a top 25, because again, we mentioned we could talk about, 32, 33, 34 guys making this list. And in fact, I'll mention one that was actually just left off on our consensus. You have him buried a little bit lower. I have him aggressively ranked. But we'll wait on that guy. We'll go to our RB25, and that is RJ Harvey. And I'm actually higher on Harvey as well amongst the two of us. I believe you have him, 27?
I think he's 26 in my rankings.
And I have him at 23. So that would be the difference here. We are still collectively a good bit lower than consensus. Consensus has him as the RB17. Underdog Fantasy right now, if you want RJ Harvey on your team, there's only 16 running backs going ahead of him. The difference for me and why I have him closer to 23 than the 17 Underdog has him at is that he's currently going above guys that I just simply thought were better prospects that also, in my opinion, have a claim to immediate workload appeal. Because that is going to be the claim. We'll talk about the case for Harvey in a second. But for me personally, when I look at TreVeyon Henderson, when I look at Kaleb Johnson, we'll talk about in a second, when I look at Quinshon Judkins, I thought they were all better prospects and they all have immediate claim towards workload, like I said. With RJ Harvey, it's an intriguing skill set. You're getting a guy that is fitting into this Broncos offense. We know what Sean Payton has been preaching all offseason, needing a lead ball carrier, needing a joker in his offense. Like, he has the 3-down skill set to be used as some people have made the comparison to this year's Bucky Irving. The issue that I have, though, is that because of the discrepancy in prospect profile, I simply cannot click the button over the other names that I just mentioned.
Yeah, and in home leagues, like, this will probably be a lot more aligned with where he'll actually go. But like you said, on Underdog, backloaded, Best Ball Mania, you want those, peak weeks to come in, like week 16, week 17, where all the money is. I can't imagine that he'll go higher than, Jones and Montgomery and those guys in managed redraft leagues. So I think we'll be about in line with consensus from a redraft perspective. But in Best Ball, that's the only, sharp ADP that we have right now. And he is being aggressively drafted by a lot of sickos out there who hate old running backs.
Yeah, and I see the pros, and I'm not going to go out there and say, like, oh, yeah, Estime, in fact, is actually going to start over RJ Harvey because he's a bell. No, like, we're not saying that, but everybody's just looking at it. Okay, what if he is the workhorse running back on this Denver Broncos team? And I just simply don't view the prospect profile as being that of a 20-touch every down guy.
Yeah, and I actually do think that he'll probably be capped around a 60 to 70% opportunity share too, because Estime can give you something in short yardage. Jaleel McLaughlin can give you something on third down as an explosive change of pace guy. I think Harvey's a good bet. I think he's a very solid bet. You, again, draft a hero RB. You grab RJ Harvey with your 7th round pick, James Conner, Tony Pollard with your 8th round pick. Great way to go about drafting. I just don't think I can draft him in like round 5 or 6, like where some people are wanting to take him right now.
Yeah, solid bet, in my opinion, though. A better bet that actually goes cheaper. I'm all in on Kaleb Johnson. Like, right now, I only have to rank him as the RB22. You can even convince me as we go on in this offseason, if he gets more expensive, I can even raise him, because when I'm just envisioning the type of back he is, the fit in the offense. By the way, Arthur Smith raved about his cerebral ability, his vision behind the line of scrimmage, saying that he is the prototype fit for the type of back he wants running behind his offense. Again, it makes sense. He's a big, powerfully framed runner, lands in the perfect zone scheme, fits, like I said, Arthur Smith already raving about him. And when you think of Smith's success with Derrick Henry, and I'm not saying Kaleb Johnson is going to be the next Derrick Henry. If he ends up being a 19.8 point per game scorer, 1,900-yard rusher, like, he's going to be the steal of dynasty drafts. But it's hard not to envision that type of role. A 6'1", 225-pound back, consensus top 5 prospect in this class, goes in the 3rd round, fills that large volume void that Najee Harris leaves behind. Unless you are ranking Jaylen Warren as a top 20 running back in redraft, you have 263 Najee carries and 48 Najee targets from last year. Again, I'm not going to go out there and say rookie Kaleb Johnson is going to eat all of that work. That's not what I'm saying. But even if he became a 240 carry, 40 target type of running back, which I think is very well in the range of outcomes, 22 feels so cheap. Like, this team will run the football. How many more pieces of evidence do you need that Arthur Smith wants to have a top 5 level rushing attack?
Yeah, and they were second in the NFL in zone attempts, which, like you said, Kaleb Johnson, big time fit. When I did the stat breakdown of the biggest splits between like zone runners and gap runners, Kaleb Johnson was drastically better in zone rushing schemes, which is one that he went to here. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Jaylen Warren, maybe first 3 weeks of the season, he's like a decent value, and we're like, oh, what a good pick Jaylen Warren was in round 8, round 9, round 10, or whatever people get him. But yeah, come week 5, week 6, I think Kaleb Johnson can definitely take over that workload. And who's to say it doesn't happen before then? Like, it's possible that we get a, preseason, you think of the way Dameon Pierce was his rookie season, where we see the preseason usage and we're like, holy shit, this guy's going to start for the Texans. And then we all started drafting Dameon Pierce really high. I could see Kaleb Johnson skyrocketing from an 8th round underdog pick or a 7th round, 6th round underdog pick, wherever he's going right now, to like a 4th round pick if he looks like he's going to start.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it also reminds me, if you remember David Montgomery in his rookie year when he got drafted by the Bears, and he ended up being like a 4th round pick despite going in round 3. I see him having that level of rise. Once you get him in that team, he's in OTAs, he's in the offseason, they see the size, they see the movement ability, the wiggle he brings to the table, the cerebral ability, again, in that zone scheme. Like, I can't guarantee by the end of the offseason I don't have him ranked above Joe Mixon.
Yeah, I won't go that far, but I do think it's not outrageous to say. But we went a long time on this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I mean, I think we kept a decent pace for talking about 25 guys, 26 guys really in depth like that. The only guy that I would say just missed out for me was Tony Pollard, because I think he will probably get a pretty decent workload yet again this year. But for the most part, I think we covered most of the running back position. I mean, we're talking about, at the end of this video, we're talking about 7th, 8th round guys. Like, this is pretty much running back strategy all over the place. We are going to talk about wide receivers. We are going to talk about quarterbacks. We are going to talk about tight ends. So stay tuned over the next coming days for that. Of course, if you guys want to get all of our redraft best ball rankings, those are live on Flock Fantasy right now. So you can definitely check that out down below in the pinned comment. If you want to take this advice straight into action, if you want to go and draft some fantasy football teams right now, $15 million in total prizes, $2 million up top to first place, $25 entry in Best Ball Mania 6. You could do up to 150 entries if you got the budget for it. If you only want to do 10, 15 bullets into it and try and get a big time score of $2 million, head on over to Underdog right now. Make sure to let us know, or let them know that we sent you. Use the promo code FSE. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus funds on the site to play with, and you'll get a gimme pick in your Pick'em lobby, NBA, NHL. You can use it right now, or you can use it in season-long Pick'em. For NFL, they already have Pick'em projections there, or you can wait until the NFL season starts to use that gimme pick. So all that stuff is linked down below in the pinned comment and in the description. Like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.